seafarer, and so today it makes sense then to just proceed to the next selection of exile poetry that we're taking a look at from the Anglo-Saxon unit. This particular piece is called The Wanderer, and as I read it, what I'd like you to do is keep in mind how the elements of exile are present. In other words, is this exile by choice? Is this exile by a forced circumstance? What impact does that exile have on the speaker of the poem? And of course, one of the great gems, I think, of these poems, and that we have them from the Exeter book, is that we have insight into what life was like for, in this case, another Anglo-Saxon warrior. That insight is something we can't really replace. You can't get that from just artifacts alone to know, oh, they were sailors, but what was it like? What was that experience? And as I mentioned in class, I want you to think like 100 years from now, people are going to look back and wonder what these kids were like at this time, and they're going to have more evidence to pick from, given our use of video or social media and those sorts of things. But arguably, even those are limited. If someone wrote some poetry, perhaps, or kept a journal, those would be really good artifacts of the time period. Okay, so The Wanderer, translated by Charles Kennedy. Oft to the wanderer, weary of exile, cometh God's pity, compassionate love. Though woefully toiling on wintry seas with churning oar in the icy wave, homeless and helpless, he fled from fate. Thus saith the warrior, mindful of misery, grievous disasters, and death of king. So this is now the words of the Wanderer. That little part introduction there, you can see this little quotation mark kind of indicating that these are the words of this wanderer. Oft when the day broke, oft at the dawning, lonely and wretched, I wailed my woe. No man is living, no comrade left, to whom I dare fully unlock my heart. I have learned, truly, the mark of a man is keeping his counsel and locking his lips, let him think what he will. For woe of heart withstandeth not fate, a failing spirit earneth no help. Men eager for honor bury their sorrow deep in the breast. So have I, also, often in wretchedness, fettered my feelings, far from my kin, homeless and hapless, since days of old, when the dark earth covered my dear Lord's face. And I sailed away with sorrowful heart over wintry seas, seeking a gold lord, if far or near lived one to befriend me, with gift in the mead hall, and comfort for grief. Who bears it knows what a bitter companion shoulder to shoulder sorrow can be, when friends are no more. His fortune is exile, not gifts of fine gold, a heart that is frozen, earth's winsomeness dead. And he dreams of the hall men, the dealing of treasure, the days of his youth, when his lord bade welcome to wassail and feast. But gone is that gladness, and never again shall the loved counsel of comrade and king. Even in slumber, his sorrow assaileth, and dreameth he claspeth his dear lord again, head on knee, hand on knee, loyally laying, pledging his liege, as in days long past. Then, from his slumber, he starts the lonely-hearted, beholding gray stretches of tossing sea, sea-birds bathing with wings outspread. While hailstorms darken and the driving snow, bitterer then is the bane of his wretchedness. The longing for loved one, his grief is renewed. The forms of his kinsmen take shape in the silence. In rapture he greets them. In gladness he scans old comrades remembered. But they melt into air with no word or of greeting to gladden his heart. Then again he surges his sorrow upon him, and grimly he spurs his weary soul once more to the toil of the tossing sea. No wonder, therefore, in all the world if a shadow darkens upon my spirit when I reflect on the fates of men. How one by one proud warriors vanish from the halls that knew them, and day by day all this earth ages and droops unto death. No man may know wisdom until many a winter has been his portion. A wise man is patient, not swift to anger, nor hasty of speech, neither too weak nor too reckless in war, neither fearful nor fain, nor too wishful of wealth, nor too eager in vow, ere, which means before, he know the event. A brave man must bide when he speaketh his boast until he know surely the goal of his spirit. A wise man will ponder how dread is that doom when all this world's wealth shall be scattered and was as now all over. Through the regions of earth, walls stand rime-covered and swept by the winds, the battlements crumble, the wine halls decay. Joyless and silent, the heroes are sleeping where the proud host fell by the wall they defended. Some battle launched on their long last journey. One a bird bore over the billowing sea. One the grey wolf slew. One a grieving earl sadly gave to the grave's embrace. The warden of men hath wasted this world till the sound of music and revel is stilled, and these giant-built structures stand empty of life. He who shall muse on these moldering ruins and deeply ponder this darkling life must brood on old legends of battle and bloodshed, and heavy the mood that troubles his heart. Where now is the warrior? Where is the war horse, bestowal of treasure and sharing a feast? Alas, the bright ale cup, the burning-clad warrior, the prince in his splendor. These days are long sped in the night of the past, as if they were never had been. And now remains only for warrior's memorial a wall wondrous high, with serpent shapes carved. Storms of ash spears have smitten the earls, carnage of weapon and conquering fate. Storms now batter these ramparts of stone, blowing snow and the blast of winter enfold the earth. Night shadows fall, darkling lower, from the north driving raging hail and wrath upon men. Wretchedness fills the realm of earth, and fate's decrees transform the world. Here, wealth is fleeting, friends are fleeting, man is fleeting, maid is fleeting. All the foundation of earth shall fail. Thus spake the sage in solitude pondering. Good man is he who guardeth his faith. He must never too quickly unburden his breast of his sorrow, but eagerly strive for redress. And happy the man who seeketh for mercy from his heavenly Father, our fortress and strength. Oh, my eye's tearing. I'm not crying, I promise. One thing I want to note before I leave here, we're going to, in our presentation that's a separate clip, talk about another common element of Anglo-Saxon poetry. And it's this space right here, okay? And you can see it in each line. It helps create a rhythm and a cadence. It's known it's known as a caesura, okay? C-A-E-S-U-R-A. And if you think of how these stories were told, I told you that traveling bards or storytellers or shops as they're called would be entertainment in the mead halls for the Anglo-Saxons. The king would have a feast and people would sing these song stories. That's why we have them in poetry form for entertainment. That caesura is translated when it was written down because it's a rhythmic pause that would give just the kind of the rhythm and flow of this tale when it was sung with that lyre, that guitar I showed in class. And so this is something you see in this poem, and you see it in our next poem, The Wife's Lament. Now, when we study Beowulf, you don't actually see the caesura as a big space in the line, but you'll see that the comma, it kind of sits there, and the way that the words will flow when you hear them, again, these were only heard, these were never read when they were, performed in front of an audience. You could only listen, you didn't have anything to see when you were studying these poems, or when you were being entertained by these song stories. So keep that in mind. That's a third element. So far we've talked about alliteration being a key element in Anglo-Saxon poetry. The kenning, the example you're going to see here is, I'm going to ask you for in your worksheet, is referring to God, capital G, where's that at, as the warden of men. This right here is a kenning for God. You see that the element of elegy is still present. Okay, an elegy being a poem that mourns the loss of someone or something. If you take a look at just how much he's mourning the loss of, again, the good old days. There was a time of glory for the Anglo-Saxons, and apparently this warrior's tale is one after that glory has faded. Goodness, you talk about how the battlements are crumbling, the wine halls are decaying, the proud host or soldiers fell by the wall they defended, a bird picked a piece of one of their bodies and carried it over the sea. Another one, a wolf slew or killed. This last part here really captures the essence of elegy and just the temporary nature of life on earth. Here, wealth is fleeting, friends are fleeting, man is fleeting, and maid is fleeting, and all the foundation of earth shall fail. So it's kind of a bit dismal, all doom and gloom. But it's true. Everything here fades. Now, you do have the monk who recorded this story down add some elements kind of trying to point to God, seeking Heavenly Father for strength. That capital F there is that Christian God. Yeah, tomorrow, as a remote learning experience, we're all going to study the Wife's Lament, which is the shortest piece and actually has the perspective of a woman during the Anglo-Saxon period. Usually just dominated with images of warriors, which was a main part of the culture. But I mean, these warriors, they had wives and they had babies, so that women had to be part of the picture. So her perspective is an interesting one and an insight into the dynamic of women's roles during this time period. And that'll be the last exile poem that we study. Okay, shoot me a question or email if you have anything to ask about today. And I'll see you on Thursday, but I'll see you again via video tomorrow.